Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Miriam Bay, and I am the host for television, and I am so excited, just so excited. Today is going to be a little bit different, and you're going to see why. But I have a young lady with me that I met in 2009, and since we met, it's like we've been old friends. And she's going to have to tell you about herself, because there was no way I was going to ask you to give me your resume, because it would be like a book. So you would have to tell the audience just who you are. And the reason why I'm so excited about this one, I mean, all my guests have been fantastic guests.
Yes.
They've all been involved in the community, all doing something that's positive, or they transform their lives in some way or another, and they just want to make things better, right? Yeah. The reason why this show is called television, because you didn't know, because we just got in contact with each other about a month or so ago. The reason why it's television is because I got the title from Michael Bernard Beckwith, who is The Answer Is You.
Yes.
And in one of his movies, he talked about television, not television, but television. So when I was trying to think of, well, what am I going to name the show? I said, that's going to be the name, because it's television.
Yes.
So anyone who comes on this show, they have to tell us what their vision is, whatever that vision may be. Is it for themselves? Is it for the community?
Yes.
Just tell us your vision. So when I knew I was going to do the last two shows for the year, your name just popped up.
Wow.
I said, oh my God. And then I got in contact with you.
Yes.
And then you sent me a video of Delaney Hall.
Yes.
Because we're going to get into that as well.
Yes.
And that brought back so many memories.
Yeah.
And then it brought me back to the first time that I met you. So having said all that, they're probably saying, who is Miriam talking about? Who is this lady she's talking about? Okay, so Miss Baraka Sele. Sele.
Yes.
Tell us who you are. What were you doing when you and I first met?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Miriam. It's such an honor. As I shared with you, I'm usually a behind-the-scenes kind of person, as are you,
yes.
as we both are.
Yes.
And so, I rarely do this kind of on stage, other than unless it's announcing an artist, which leads into kind of who I am and what I do. So currently I'm an independent consultant, but as you know, prior to that, I was the Assistant Vice President of Programming at New Jersey Performing Arts Center, which is where we met, had the opportunity to meet.
Yes.
And you just reminded me before we got started of the occasion, which was I was doing a series called Legacies and Legends, and interviewing several prominent artists and important figures in our community and in our world.
Right.
And the first person in that series was Susan Taylor.
That's right.
Former editor of Essence magazine.
Right.
And you were in the audience, and you stood up and asked a question after Susan spoke and after the interview, and talked about who you were, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, this is my kind of woman, because you were working at Delaney Hall.
Yes.
And that really touched my heart. About the work that you were doing, who you are. And so I'm also glad to hear that in this conversation we're going to be interviewing each other.
Yes.
Because I think what happens is we assume the person sitting in this chair on this side of the table is the person that's living some kind of exciting, life or a life of vision. But I also know you to be a visionary, and so very honored to know you. So since I was at New Jersey Performing Arts Center for 15 years, I started off as the curator of the center's World Festival, which then became Alternate Roots, was what we titled it.
Right.
And so many different projects. I had the honor of traveling all over the world, bringing artists from all over the world. But just as important, what people don't realize is I also had the honor and the privilege to work with so many artists and arts organizations right here in Newark.
Yes.
Because sometimes when we have the opportunity to travel around the world and work with artists around the world, we forget that some of the most incredible artists are in our own backyard.
Yes.
And so that was one of the reasons I was also excited to work with you, because it gave me the opportunity to do a project that was very dear to my heart, and I know dear to your heart.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that one later.
Yes, yes.
But right now, I want to ask you another question regarding you were at NJPAC for 15 years. 15,
it doesn't even seem possible.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you told me all that you were doing in the artist, so tell me some of the artists that you met.
Excuse me. Oh my goodness. I don't even know. I'm so sorry.
And of all the times I don't have any water, it's like right now.
That's okay. Well, going back to, let's start with some of the wonderful artists in New Jersey.
Yes.
And of course, what was so interesting, I had, back when I grew up in Michigan and going to college in Michigan, I was studying Amiri Baraka when I was a young woman. And so then to have the opportunity to come here and actually work with him and produce projects with him was such an honor. And many people don't know that also the street that runs in front of NJPAC, that's now called Sarah Vaughan Way.
Yes.
Myself and Stephanie Hewley actually organized the naming ceremony for that street. It was actually a different. So yes, we got together with Sharp James, who was the mayor at the time, and said we want to change the name of the street to Sarah Vaughan, because also when I was in Houston, Texas, at an organization that produced the Houston Jazz Festival, I had an opportunity to present Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
So she was also one of the living legends, and then to come and work in the city where these amazing artists, were born and raised and created their art. So that was such an honor. But
you're like you're like a historian, because of all the artists that you met who were legends. You had to get into some of their history in order
absolutely
to work with them.
And I'm so glad you said that, because one of the things that I'm concerned about in my profession is I try to do a great deal of research. I don't just, like somebody said to me once, oh, you just present artists that you like.
Right.
And I was like, anybody could do that.
Right.
I was like, you don't understand. I'm what's called a performing arts curator. Just like a person at the Newark Museum has to go and do research and decide what kind of, like, to use your word, vision is going to be on our walls or in our exhibit halls. I have to do the same thing on a stage. Right. I have to decide for a whole season, and that was usually from October to April of every year, what the vision of my season would look like. Who were the artists? What's going to happen in dance? What's going to happen in music? What's going to happen in theater? Right. And so you're right. I did a great deal of research, studying, and that was about the travel. I wasn't just traveling to, see the world. I was traveling so that I would understand with each artist their cultural context, to use your word, their historical context, their economic, social, spiritual context. And so then I use that information, the research, to then connect them with this community. Right. So even not only in Newark, but in surrounding areas in New Jersey, I was able to create programs that connected artists to communities, to cultural centers, to classes, to classrooms, to teachers. And so that was the important part of the knowledge, was using it to connect people with the community that I lived in. Yes.
Well, now, what about, because in our schools, music,
Yes.
art has been taken.
Yes.
It's not like it was when we were growing up.
Yes. Yes.
So you had the opportunity, and still do have the opportunity, of working with a lot of young artists.
Yes. Yes.
What do you think about our young artists that's coming up like right now?
And this is why I love Miriam Bay. What a great question. Miriam, I find it so sad that so many folks in my generation are talking about, oh, the kids are going to the dogs. Oh, they don't know this. Oh, they don't know that. It's not like when we were growing up.
Right.
But if we recall, my mother used to say the same thing about me and my generation.
Right.
And so one of the things that I was really excited about in working at NJPAC was I initiated and produced an international hip hop festival.
You did?
Yes, for 10 years.
That's right.
International Hip Hop Festival.
Right.
And I love to tell the story of how it started. I had a town meeting. I had some young people pass out leaflets at all over communities, like I said, community cultural centers, events, Rutgers University, some of the other universities.
Right.
I called a town hall meeting. And at this town hall meeting, all these young black men showed up, one standing on the wall with his arm folded, and he said to me, "Who the hell are you?" And I said, "Absolutely no one. Who are you?" And he said, "Well, what the," and I won't use the word that he said, "What the do you know about hip hop?" And I said, again, absolutely nothing.
Right.
That's why you're here.
Right.
You're going to teach me about hip hop, and I'm going to teach you how to produce events at a $180 million art facility.
Wow.
So I
diffused.
Yes.
It brought it down. Okay.
Yes.
Because he wasn't expecting that, I'm sure.
I don't think so.
No, okay.
And so they indeed started to teach me. I had not owned a television for 27 years. All I did was read. And they said, you've got to get a television.
Love that. Oh my God.
All I did was read for 27 years. And so they said, you've got to watch MTV, you've got to watch VHS. They told me what books to buy, what to read. They gave me an education. But in turn, I said to them, Miriam, okay, we're going to do this festival every other year. And in that year in between, what you're going to do is work with me. I'm going to hire you. I'm going to pay you to be guest curators. Right. Guest curating doesn't mean you just hire your friends.
Right.
It means you do what? The research.
The research.
You're going to do some research. You're going to work
with education.
It's an education.
Yes. Okay.
And we're going to use this festival to educate people about your world. Because I'll never forget, and a man in between my generation and their generation came to one of the meetings and he said, well, the problem is you young people don't know anything about, John Coltrane and Sonny Rollins. And one of the young men stopped them and said, what do you know about Chuck D? What do you know about Africa Bambaataa? What do you know about our legends of hip hop? And I was like, okay, we're getting ready to have. That's the conversation
yes.
and the education.
And the education, yes.
So that's what the festival became about. It became not just a performance or a gig. We talked a lot about how do we educate. So we had everything from performance to panel discussions to workshops to film screenings. It turned out to be a really incredible event, and we brought other hip hop artists from all over the world.
Wow.
From South Africa, from England, from Mozambique, it was really, I was very proud. And I have to say, this is where I have to give Larry Goldman, the former president of NJPAC, credit.
Yes.
Because we actually got a nasty letter of someone who was a patron who gave money to NJPAC and said,